all around the world in Europe, Asia, and more to come. So keep an eye on us. We employ more than 125 internationally recognized specialists in more than 50 categories of sales and work at every level with collectors of all kinds. The collectors are the basis for Heritage. We were founded by coin collectors. They are still running the company today, and they understand, and all of us understand the collector, whether you collect American art or coins or comic books. Collecting is our passion here at Heritage. Last year, we did more than $2 billion in sales. Much of it, coins, comics, sports, other collectibles. And while we're the leader in these fields, more than $250 million of our 2025 revenue was in fine and decorative art, jewelry, and luxury goods. So not just comic books and coins. With this in mind, I want to just say something about celebrating American art, and this comes naturally to us. We are America's auction house. It's our privilege to host a conference of this level, and for experts to come here for just a couple of days each year to explore how artists have challenged boundaries in American art and culture, coinciding this year with the nation's 250th anniversary. So if you look around the gallery today, and I encourage you during a break to get up and make sure you walk through the whole gallery, I hope you can see immediately that American art is deeply significant and valued here at Heritage. In fact, we are the only auction house that maintains American art as its own distinct, unique sales category. Our passionate support for the vitality of American art is the perfect segue to introduce my dear friend, Lisa Cohn. Lisa, I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing together all of these amazing thinkers in this category to explore dynamic topics in American art this year, Boundless Horizons. We look forward to delving into these topics and celebrating with all of you. And now I want to welcome Lisa Cummings.
Okay, can you all hear me? Okay, so good morning, everybody. So please look behind me. You will see a work featuring three girls, two of whom look puzzled or befuddled, the third astonished at what they're hearing. Um, those girls could be myself, Aviva, who is the deputy chair for fine arts, Aviva Lehman, who has been sort of on this journey since before she was at Heritage, and arguably my daughters or my mothers. That's how central American art has been for me. And what I want to do is lay a bit of landscape for you for these 30 years. We started in 1996, and the conference was called Expanding Horizons. This is the brochure. These will all be available for you to look at, but as Ann Helmreich can attest, someday these will be items of value, I hope. So this was 1996. In 1997, we did the first conference on American frames, to which we remain deeply committed. And think about the frame and how it impacts what you see, how you see, who makes the choices, and what questions that raises. We then did something called process and collaboration, which looked at works on paper and print. Introduced consideration of fashion. This was while American art was ongoing at the same time. Broadened to include sculpture, which is an under-recognized category, I think often because people have trouble considering issues of placement and installation and security. But we were in Ira Sanderman's warehouse, the legendary jeweler in American art, who is unfortunately no longer with us, but he had a phenomenal number of very important American mid-century marble sculptures, and we went in a truck to his warehouse and ate lunch amidst the sculpture. We've had a very deep commitment that is ongoing to the arts and crafts movement. And the reason I mention this is why do we draw artificial distinctions between one medium and another, when in fact we should be looking to see what are the synergies, what are the commonalities, and why are we creating an artificial category, elevating one thing over another? Worth thinking about. Now, just so you know, we are not guns for hire, but we are souls with a purpose. And we took the show on the road to California and did plein air before and beyond. We've done conferences in other parts of the country and the world. We are delighted to bring American art, broadly writ or narrowly construed, to you wherever you are. We will still maintain New York, but please know. Now, where do we go to see American art? Well, often we go to museums. And what is it about these institutions and the way they position art? Well, even the way they have a doorway, does it welcome us or does it put us off? We took on these questions in several conferences about museum architecture, installation, and display. Works on paper. Why are Americans so nervous about what might not be perfection? And we've got Kathy Foster, who's going to be the next speaker, who has done so much extraordinary work on works on paper. We are skittish about it. Imperfection is real beauty. That triumphs over ideal beauty. Read your Ruskin. Culture in peril. That's what we are living through now. Really, not 2 continents away, but here in our own backyard. When the Bamiyan Buddha and 9/11 happened, we started to take on those issues, and we will not flinch. And I want to put in a word for the organization Living New Deal, which is incredibly important, and you will hear from people who are on the board and committed to its mission throughout the conference. Design. Hey, what about that tea set? Then I want to take a minute to talk about this marching toward modernism, because modernity, modernisms, what they mean, has been something we've been looking at really since the beginning. I want to take a moment to thank Wanda Korn for being here. Not only is she my beacon, but she was my father's passion. And this conference in that year was dedicated to my dad, because he died in 2002, and it is every year. How do you make American art exciting and interesting? Make it joyful. Make it an invention. Don't shirk from the questions. It's not something we should be and revere and step back from. We took on the catalog raisonné, where angels fear to tread. Specific movements, tonalism. This was another side project that we did because, oh my gosh, there were these major tonalism shows. Nobody's doing anything. That was the same thing with U.S. design. Okay, so we did. We then did a conference called The Canon, celebrating American art. The Canon ? We will have a question mark after that expression forever, as long as it is in use, because the canon is shifting, it's moving, we are ever reshaping as we learn more, as we challenge our own preconceptions, even as we broaden what we think of as American. And in 2004, we did Encounters with the Land, American depictions from 17th century to the present. And I'm stopping in this survey with that because it leads us to this moment. What's a frontier? What's a horizon? What do these words mean? Do they continue to be relevant? Well, an exhibition at the Amon Carter about contemporary Western landscape, which we will hear about at some length, tells us it is. The continued exploration of space tells us that it is. We are always looking for a horizon and intrigued by it. And somebody who I think speaks so beautifully to that is Bob Cozzolino. And in his talk last year, which hopefully we will get his prize at some point, he addressed that fascination and quest magnificently. Having said that, and I just wanted to ground this because there are people who are thrilled that there are people here who have not been here before. And the early bird catches the worm. I may be the worm, so you'll get the butterfly later. But um, a little bit of history is sometimes useful. We want to say a special thank you to those who stand by us and have stood by us. So first of all, to Heritage. Um, this was really a magical connection that was made. Um, we are here for American art. We challenge the categories as does Heritage. We invite you to question them. And we invite you to come up with new answers to those questions, as we will every year. We also want to thank American Fine Art. They are a partner and a sponsor. There is a magnificent ad in the issue that is in your bag, and there is also a wonderful article about the conference. We are extremely grateful. But now, let me turn to something else, and that is the list of names on this slide. Yes, of course, you see Heritage and American Fine Art. We're also grateful to Aunt who supports us with media sponsorship. But what else do you see? So, the Bennett Prize, which is an initiative launched by Stephen Bennett and Elaine Malati Schmidt, who are devoted collectors of America, sorry, figuration of women by women, and who have launched an incredibly important initiative, the Bennett Prize, which results in the winner, who is somebody to be discovered, who is worthy of coming to the fore, getting a traveling exhibition. It happens every 2 years, and please look out for it because it's an important initiative where people actually decided I'm contributing, I am selecting a category, there are reasons for this, we are highlighting it, we are getting behind it. People collect for all different kinds of reasons, and when you're thinking about collectors, if you happen to be a dealer or you're a curator, for example, not just your own collection, but those you shepherd, why is somebody going to be intrigued by something, and how do we help them want the best in that category? Jim Dickey, many of you may know Jim. He is a major figure in the American art world, and Jim has been by my side, our side, since 1996, and he spoke in 1997 as he did last year. We are deeply grateful for his partnership and support and counsel. Similarly, Dee Dee Wigmore, whose Madison Avenue Gallery I remember well, and you will visit her, those of you who are able, on Saturday morning to see their exhibition, which is an important one. Ken Woodcock, another very important person in American art, pivotal supporter of CAFA, for example, and many other institutions, and we are grateful to have him along with us. Then I want to talk about the fact that this is an ongoing campaign. Okay, one of the things that has made this possible is the O'Brien Art Foundation. And that was founded by a gentleman called Marty O'Brien. Marty is coming to this conference for a long time. And commenting, supporting, etc. He then forms the foundation, and we will bless have him issue the challenge. If I pledge this, you raise the same, plus I will stand with you. Marty has made the world possible for the past 2 years, and we pray that he will continue to do so as we go forward. He is also an incredibly important person to listen to because he is a collector with a very distinct point of view. He is incredibly informed and deeply committed to American art and putting everything that he has behind supporting American art. This is the collaboration, cross category, cross tagline that we are striving for because that is what is going to make the materiality that is our culture endure, matter, and thrive. I'm also grateful, therefore, to mention two new supporters, um, CW American Modernism and Lincoln Glen Gallery. We are so thrilled when new people or new entities join what we are striving to do, and we're grateful for their support and grateful for the vote of confidence that it needs. And I have left for last Hollis Art, and there is a reason for that. In 1995, I went to see Fred Hill, who is Hollis Art, at Berry Hill to talk about this crazy American Art Conference that I thought we should do. And no one had done one, so everybody thought, oh my God, this one is nuts. He knew I was pregnant. And I walked in, and Fred, who is always gracious, said, you're not wearing maternity clothes. I said, Fred, this is it. We proceeded to make a plan for Berry Hill's engagement, and that was in 1996. Fred has been by my side, by the side of American art, steadfast, with love, and without bravado. So I also, given that this is really a time to acknowledge importance, I want to say my mom's not here, and I hope that she will be. But I was fortunate enough to be born into a world where there was real concern for and passion for American art. And I really do have my parents to thank for it. I'm grateful that my daughter shares it. Um, I hope that that cycle of commitment is something that we can inspire with, share, pass on. Um, and there are so many people in this room who have played important roles in the development of this conference over time. And the reality is that at the end of the day, there are three huge things that count. I'm going to say the first one first, and everyone's going to laugh. Money, because you cannot flush the toilet without it. Excuse me for being so crude, but the fact is that the show must go on. People are living as they are thinking about this. So what's the second thing? Time. You are giving your time to be here, to share with us, to explore with us, to say, hey, why is that thing in a separate category called illustration? What is illustration? Where does illustration become art? Is it art? Let's ask ourselves that question. And the third thing is relationships and humanity. Without relationships, without community, without the friendships we form, coming together out of shared commitment and shared interest, there is no spark. And spark is what makes it fun. And fun is what makes us all go on, even if you're mad as hell because the East Wing just stopped torn down. It is possible to hold two thoughts in your head at once. It is a luxury to draw the breath of life on a refulgent summer day. At the same time, whatever your ideology, whatever perspective you're coming from, commit to the fact that there is meaning in materiality and just know that everything that surrounds you is a good, better, best, also a meaning. We commit to American art. We thank all of you for being with us and all of you who have supported us because it really means the world. And I normally don't talk this much, but I will close with one line. Elaine Stritch, my father loved Elaine Stritch and went to see her with my mother perform in what was to be her last show. And it was so great. I said, oh my God, you've got to go. And she came out, walked onto the stage with legs as long as I am, and a tuxedo top with a top hat. And she opened and she said, I'm going to try to do this. I'm still here. I hope in 30 years I can say that to all of you. My legs will not be longer, but I hope my voice will be as resonant. So with that, welcome. Thank you. Now, I'm going to do brief introductions because, first of all, we know one another, but also because the meat of the matter comes out in the talk. But I've been blessed to know Kathy for a very long time. She's spoken often in our conference. We go back, actually. We first met in New Haven, which you may not remember. I was his friend. And it's her work on Aikens, but also on works on paper and commitments, installation, and questioning the installation. It's such an honor to have her with us, and I can't think of anyone better to open this conference and also pose an interesting question by virtue of what she's done. It is, how do we keep getting the work done in the face of certain challenges that are part of today's landscape? Anyway, I'm honored to introduce Kathy Foster from the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Can you hear me? Working. Good morning, everyone. Yes, as Lisa said, I am a veteran of this conference. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm very honored to be the kickoff speaker. And I think I have a project that is appropriate as a kickoff, partly because we are in the 250th anniversary of the country, and that's really the nature of this project. But also, Lisa touched on a number of themes, I think, that my talk is going to cover. And so it's a way to actually introduce some of the ideas here that we're all grappling with in 2026. So here is the title slide of, this is a Thomas Moran painting from the Middleton collection. And there's a Thomas Moran painting also in the program that's going to be part of a discussion later about American landscape. So you're getting a lot of beautiful pictures of the Green River. What I'm about to talk about is a nested project that is two things bundled up in one. And the first and the big, sparkling, exciting special exhibition is a Nation of Artists, which is a special collaboration, never been done before, between the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Middleton Family Collection, all bundled together into a three-way program in Philadelphia meant to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country. And so that's like the big sparkling thing we're hoping you'll all come to Philadelphia to see, happening at two venues, but with united themes, and both venues sharing important loans from the Middleton collection, which is one of the greatest private collections in the country. The second thing, however, it's like Russian dolls nested inside, is a permanent collection reinstallation for both the Pennsylvania Academy and the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Both of us working with our own collections. So most of the things that you'll be seeing in these two installations are from our own museum, with these Middleton gems sparkled in among them. But the core, the heart of both of these projects are a reconsideration of our own permanent collections. So, for starters here, this is a painting from the Middleton collection, Field at Princeton from 1778. This is a replica of one of 8 versions of this painting. The Pennsylvania Academy also has one. So each of us are going to have glorious pictures of George Washington here during the Revolutionary War. And on our first floor, which is our early American galleries, these were opened in 2021, so this is part of an ongoing project. We cover the area from the late 1600s all the way to the early 19th century. And we refreshed those galleries with some loans from the Middleton collection in order to focus on the story of the American Revolution, including, in particular, the Peel of 1778. This is a painting done to celebrate the victory at Princeton and at Trenton, the famous crossing of the Delaware at Christmas time. This was a turning point in the Revolution, and George Washington really thought it was all over, honestly. He didn't think the Continental Army was going to make it. And these 2 victories turned the tide. Suddenly, the European allies like France began to take us seriously. It was a major, important moment. And what we remember in this painting is not only that victory, but also the triumph of Washington standing on captured battle flags from British regiments. Well, what you see over Washington's shoulder here in the distance are a set of 4 battle flags from the Middleton collection that are American regimental flags that were captured by the British, taken to England, stored in a stately home for 200 years until they were sold and purchased by the Middleton family. So these are the only 4, there's only like a dozen of these that survive, American military flags. 4 of them are, the last 4 in private collections. So we have this little moment at the beginning of our installation to remember the Revolutionary period. Well, as I mentioned, this is a part of a permanent collection of installation. And the first floor, for those of you who've been to the Philadelphia Museum in the last 5 years, in 2021 we opened brand new galleries, our early American galleries. This is the very first gallery. This is the first thing you see in that gallery, portraits of Tushkuan and La Teresa by Vesalius, hanging on the wall over the famous wampum belt that Pamanend gave to William Penn in 1682, which sort of like the Magna Carta of Pennsylvania, this wampum belt. So we begin the galleries downstairs with a salute to the first people who were here, the Lenape people, and especially to women artists who had made this wampum belt. But I mention this in order to remind you that we started off our reinstallation in 2021 with this first tranche of galleries on the first floor. And now, right now, this month, we have opened up the second half of the story of the galleries on the second floor. Now, those of you who remember or haven't been to the museum in a while know that the Philadelphia Museum of Art American galleries are in 3 places. We have historic rooms on the 3rd floor. We have those early American galleries on the 1st floor that I just described to you. And then sandwiched in the middle are these brand new galleries that are really, to me, the heart of the story, the reinstallation of our American story. Well, that first gallery on the 2nd floor, taking you upstairs to the second set of galleries, we're rolling from about 1830, 1840, all the way up to 1960, more or less, with some kind of achievement. And we wanted to introduce in the very first gallery some of the major themes, and also help think for a minute about how the 250th anniversary changed the way that we might have done this installation. We wanted to celebrate something that all Americans could get behind. This is a tornado time right now. I mean, in a great division of politics and of opinion. What was something that we could all get behind? American creativity, the sensational, amazingly diverse story of American creativity. So that's the story of these galleries. The first big idea, and I'm not going to give you a tour of these galleries, but I'm going to try to give you some of the big ideas. The first idea is there's no single American. There's no single American art history. And I'm recovering from the cold, so excuse me. It's a patchwork. It's a braid of different traditions, multiple traditions, sometimes blending, sometimes intersecting, and that's what we tell in this very first gallery. that shows American faces, American figures dancing at home, at work, coming home from war, etc. And here you have Chucky Williams painting Ray Charles alongside Florian Stettheimer with women carrying through a big sale, spring sale at Bengal's. This is American shopping, American play music. That's the big idea here, the superficial idea of this gallery. But the deeper idea is the variety of stories that we have here. Chucky Williams, Shreveport, Louisiana. Black man has a vision from God that says he should be an artist and starts to paint. This is a picture that is on a piece of plywood, and on the back is Dolly's partner. So he is like doing popular pop figures from homemade materials that he's finding in his backyard. Florian Stettheimer, Upper West Side, patroness of a famous avant-garde salon, a Jewish heiress who traveled through Europe, had the personal private art classes, and then learned from the great museums of Europe. The two of them side by side in this gallery to give you a sense of the variety of talent that we're going to be surveying in American art. That story continues in the first gallery, and we begin to continue now the chronological story that we began downstairs. We started with La Provenza, Tichuan, and Tamanin. And likewise, in this first gallery, we begin with Native Americans because we wanted to remember the first people, and we also wanted to open up this story of what is art. And that's where Lisa's comments, I think, are made. How many different materials American artists work with, how many different ways they become artists. So in the foreground, we have Wanda Aragon and Francis Toribio, two Acoma potters from the late 20th century, representing women artists, representing indigenous art, and representing homeschooling, because Wanda was taught by her mother, Frances. And that story of domestic education is actually a big story in American art. Most of our artists did not go to art school. I want you to open up your mind to think about the art that's around you, about how there are artists everywhere, and how they learn to be artists in many different ways. Over the shoulder of these two pots, you see Winslow Homer's Lifeline, one of our chestnuts of the American galleries at the PMA. We've had this painting for a century, and it was one of Homer's most famous paintings. Homer didn't go to art school. He learned on the job. He learned at Harper's Magazine. He learned in the photography studio. And that story of learning on the job is another big, big story. You learn from your mom. You learn from the ladies at home, and you see that quilt in the background, probably made by women, by a collective of women. You learn at home or you learn on the job. That's much more common background story for American artists than actually going to a fine art school. So that idea to open up your awareness of where artists are and where they come from is continued in this gallery with a case of work from Pennsylvania German community in Pennsylvania. We have a powerful collection of Pennsylvania German art. This is a classic folk art. I want to throw away this idea of folk art, and we tried in these galleries to not talk about people as outsiders, as folk artists, as commercial artists, as academic artists. We wanted to just think about big art and how it's everywhere in the United States. It's on your street, it's in your family, and think big about the variety of materials, the variety of training. So that's another one of the big ideas. Over the shoulder of the Pennsylvania German case, you can see the next gallery, which really begins a chronological story, and that's where we start telling the story of the mid-19th century of abundance, prosperity, and inequity. This is showcasing Philadelphia's PMA's personal story, which is we began as a school and a museum of decorative arts, and that's where the joint show with PAPA, which PAPA began as an academic art school. They're bearing down on that story. We're bearing down on our story, which has to do with the variety of media that artists took up and made art in the United States. So in the story of abundance, you see the mid-19th century's fabulous love of ornamentation, of the effusiveness and enthusiasm for historic styles. Here are some of the objects in that gallery that coexist simultaneously. In the center, a great jar, huge jar by Dave Drake, this tall. A child could climb inside this. It's enormous. contrasting it to the curly, ornate Rococo and Gothic Revival furniture that could well have been in the parlor upstairs while this was in the kitchen or in the basement. We want to show the simultaneity of these traditions, the grandeur of both. That is, both days, the functional jar is an amazing piece of sculpture and a mastery of craft, but also for you to think about how this gallery is a curly furniture that encircles the day jar is exactly represents the literal foundation of the economy of the United States in this moment of prosperity, which was slavery. And Dave, as an enslaved person making this, is literally the economic foundation of the wealth that existed in this country. Well, the next gallery opens the idea of globalism. And it's an idea from downstairs. We continue it. We begin in the 17th century with how the American colonies are tied into the global world, to China, to Europe as well, and also to talk about the inventiveness of American technology. So there's two stories in this gallery represented by this insanely magenta dress from about 1870, made with new dyes, brand new dyes from coal tar, aniline dyes. These colors revolutionized American dress, American interiors, because you could get these thin-like colors that were also color fast. So that it changed everything for Americans. But this dress is made of Chinese silk, came 12,000 miles around the world in order to be dyed in France with chemicals invented in Britain, the new aniline dyes, then shipped to Philadelphia where it was made into a dress for a Philadelphia lady. So that idea of global connections and global trade are going to be themes throughout the installation. Well, the next gallery intends to invoke a private salon from a tycoon in the really gilded age. We modeled this after a Philadelphia collector, but it also resounds to the Vanderbilt collection here in New York, with things hung frame to frame with fancy furniture, dark walls, chandeliers, etc. The theme in this gallery is not only to make you feel like you are in 1880 in a private art gallery, but also to think about nature and nature. That is, we chose for landscape themes in this gallery. Mr. Vanderbilt actually had figure paintings and had a lot of French paintings, so it wasn't as single-minded as this installation, but we also wanted to tell a story about nature and nature, about the power of landscape and nature in American art. And we had a lot of fabulous paintings from the Middleton collection to add to this glory. Here's another view of that same wall with Bierstadt's painting of the turquoise wave in the foreground here, to represent the force of nature, this giant wave coming up to crash on the beach, with a broken mast, representing the power of the sea, the power of nature. This is a spiritual theme in American art in the middle of the 19th century. That is, nature as God's work, and particularly as God's blessing on the United States. So having a landscape painting like this in your house is to remind you of the power of nature, but also to remind you of the divinity of nature. So nature is a refuge, it's a solace, it's a source of inspiration, but it's also a source of patriotism. It's what made the United States special. And quite honestly, this is the root of American exceptionalism. This is the moment when Americans, and certainly it begins in the 18th century, began to think of themselves as a special place. Because the power of our landscape, it's the richness of it, the diversity of it, the beauty of it. So there is this tremendous pride and a sense of national identity in the landscape. The other wall in this room, here's a view of that wall with three Middleton paintings, Jennifer Moran, I showed you at the beginning, a Duncanson below, and then another Bierstadt on the right, with our own Frederick Church in the center. Western landscapes, exotic landscapes. This idea of the thrill of the West, and we're going to have another panel, I think, talking about these Western landscapes, signaling the beauty, the opportunity, the amazing openness of the American landscape as an opportunity. This is the story of the manifest destiny. You all learned about that in high school. What's not seen in this painting? Native American. Now, in the front of the Moran, there's a little tiny man seated on a rock in the foreground, a little indigenous person. But by and large, this is the perspective of the Western colonial settlement that idea of manifest destiny that you were going to take over the continent, the instantly disregarded Native Americans, they were swept aside or killed or moved to other reservations. And so we wanted to tell the alternate story. And for the first time, we have a right adjacent to this landscape gallery, we have a Native American gallery, which we're calling Cross Currents, to show the other perspective. This is the first time we've gone deep into showing Native American art. It was an initiative that required finding a whole committee of advisors to help us not only select the work that we showed from our collection, but also write the labels. So this was a moment really of bringing in other voices and an initiative, I think, that was very rewarding. One of the big ideas here is that these people are not vanished. That idea that you see in those Western landscapes, and, Bierstadt and Moran, that they are basically doomed to vanish. No, they're still here. They're, in fact, tremendously vital and creative. We wanted to underscore their presence. Well, at the back of the galleries is our big world stage, American Artists on the World Stage. This is a recap of globalism in trying to evoke a sense of the great international exhibitions of this period. So we go from a private salon in 1880 to an international salon, like the Paris Salon, like the Centennial in Philadelphia in 1876, like the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. We actually had 8 paintings and sculptures that were from these very expositions, and talk about the impact of these for American artists who were showing their work in the company of their European colleagues, learning and also earning reputations. So this is the room where we have Whistler and Sargent and Cassatt and Tanner, and also a brand new painting, our Pierce painting here in the lower right-hand corner of the Return from the Fields, a Paris Salon painting par excellence from 1884 by an American expatriate. So that story of American artists on the world stage is then followed off to the right by our Akins gallery. Well, Lisa mentioned my work on Akins, which I've been doing since I was like a child, I think. We have the great collection in the country of Akins, and so we have a whole gallery devoted to the Akins collection. And that opened last year. We didn't make many changes for this special occasion, except we added some visiting stars. And so in the right-hand side of that gallery, we have Akins' colleagues, his friends, his students, and followers. And so we talk about the Akins legacy, as well as where Akins kind of stood in the community of artists around 1900. And this is a moment for us to show the Middleton's fabulous Sergeant of Siesta, these ladies and 4 people lolling on a hillside in the Alpine Italy. A gorgeous, gorgeous painting. I'm here to tell you the Middletons have this hanging over their bed. Oh, anyway, the idea that you wake up and look at this painting is pretty exciting. Anyway, the idea here is to trace the legacy of realism, Akins' pristine and scientific realism, then how it is changed by the impact of Impressionism. So basically, we have a gallery beyond here that is dedicated to American Impressionism. Previously, this also opened last year. Previously, we focused on the Pennsylvania Impressionists, which are our local theme. In the center is a painting by Daniel Garber, who was a student at the Pennsylvania Academy, taking Akins' realism and moving it into the color and light of Impressionism. Well, thanks to the Middleton loans, we were able to flank the Garber from 1915 with the Tarbell, 1899, Tarbell being the older generation that Garber would learn from, and with a bellows from 1916. So the bellows on the right is really from right on the same moment as the Garber. All 3 of these artists, Tarbell, Garber, bellows, keeping their darling daughters. So this is a wall that signals the realism of this generation. That is, these are people painting real people, contemporary people, people dear to them in their family, and with an amazing quality of drawing, especially the Garber, which shows that light drawing, that sense of anatomical focus that you could learn at the academy from Akins and his descent, but then adding the luminosity of brighter color and lighter tonality to the shimmer of this. So this is the transformation of realism into realist impressionism with a very strong dose of scholarly affection that makes this wall, your blood pressure drop here in this room. It's delightful. Yeah. Well, we have a room dedicated to the arts and crafts. I love Lisa's defense of the arts and crafts throughout these sessions, throughout her different years. And this is a moment when the return of the handmade comes back in the 1890s, and the turn of the century. And so that's like the big story in here. The subversive story here is about women artists, because the arts and crafts movement is a moment when women artists suddenly can get a paycheck from making art. And we have paintings in this room. Mary Cassatt is in this room also, but other women artists painting canvases. But this piece of woodwork here, designed by Pittman in Cincinnati, was carved by women at his art school. And so we have a generation of women potters, Mary Louise McLaughlin and others making ceramics, women making wooden objects, and then we have the Tiffany girls. This is a Tiffany lamp. Many of you will know about Clara Driscoll, that he was the captain of the Tiffany girls in the Tiffany workshop. Tiffany hired women to choose and plate the stained glass in his glass. Not only did Clara Driscoll make the designs for these lamps, but the women chose the glass because Tiffany felt that they had higher sensitivity to color. So it was a workshop entirely of women. And that idea of women moving into professional paying ranks here is a story. Well, the next 8 galleries are all about the 20th century. And what we tried to do is create a foil for some of our earlier themes. And this gallery, Nature and Spirit, is parallel to that great big green gallery with all of the Morans and the Bierstadts, thinking about how nature and landscape are powerful in the 20th century. This is a good contrast to that early gallery in that the unanimity of style, the realism that you saw in the Bierstadt Moran Church gallery, where everybody was sort of agreed that a descriptive naturalism was the style to go on. Now, suddenly, after about 1910, the lid blows off and every style is possible. The old academic realism now is suddenly cast away, and we have individual expression liberated by new strategies in modernism, mostly learned from Europe. So we have the impact of European modernism in this room. And along the back wall there, you can see the Middleton's Hopper, a Stella, and 2 Hartley paintings on the wall. But also the idea, there's 2 sources here. One is European modernism that's bringing expressionistic color, a wild and crazy drawing, and an abandoned or a powerful sense of individualism. But the second source is American folk art. Because what's going on at this time, and I'm looking at you, Wanda Korn, is a search for a national taste, for Americanness. And what this is happening, Kandinsky is looking at Russian folk art. Americans are looking at American so-called folk art, that is, the indigenous traditions of the Hispanic villages of New Mexico, of Native American culture, and also of New England provincial art. So this is a moment when Madeline is driving around, Laurent driving around and buying, plain portraits from New England because of the power of their sense of design, because of the spirituality in these images, and the simplicity in furniture and tools from this era. So the Americana is suddenly impacting the way that moderns are thinking about their work. So I've got Georgia O'Keeffe here, her Red Hills and Bones, a painting made in the same landscape that this totally terrifying depth cart was made in northern New Mexico, somewhere on the high road between Santa Fe and Taos, a death cart that would have been dragged through the landscape at Easter time, a figure of death with a bow and arrow to remind you that death is everywhere, that you need to get right with God. In other words, intentionally creepy, and so please come and get creeped out by this death cart and think about how that would have been moving for Hartley and for O'Keeffe, recognizing the power of indigenous American tradition. Well, the next march of these galleries goes from landscape to figure. The Figures and Dreams Gallery talks about the impact of surrealism, and it also has a subversive theme of women artists, because half of the things in this gallery are by women artists. You might recognize the Dorothea Canning on the far wall there, the really unsettling painting, Birthday, but also Marguerite Zorak, Helen Lindeberg on this wall here alongside Andy Wyeth, um, showing Wyeth as a child of surrealism, really, making you think again about Wyeth as well as about these stories of the dream and the unconscious. Well, adjacent to that is a gallery of friends, neighbors, and heroes. This is figure painting in a more intimate and storytelling mode, with some of our most hard-hitting figures. I mean, this is Pippin's Mr. Prejudice here in the lower left, the charismatic portrait of James Baldwin by Bertha Delaney. These are some powerful pictures in a more intimate gallery. Well, the next gallery introduces pure form. And what I've been doing in this March of Galleries is introducing some of the main themes of modernism, that is expressionistic color and drawing. Now, the power of dreams in the unconscious, and now here, the power of pure form, geometry, abstraction, and the theory of purification, of streamlining. This is the moment of our Art Deco. This is the moment of precisionism. So we have Luigi Lucioni here and Charles Steeler on the left-hand wall, alongside our amazing Etheric fireplace, a Donald Esky screen. Again, mixing it up here, painting, sculpture, ceramics, furniture, interiors, thinking about a period style, about period notions. Adjacent to this gallery is our Speed, Sound, and the Machine Gallery. Here is Sheeler's famous Yachts and Yachting. And what do we say? Here's a piece that I promised you'd have decorative arts, but putting the cold-flesh tea set, which is done for Gorham, alongside the Sheeler, thinking about streamlined form, about the machine age, about the power of these clean surfaces, and also about this impossible idea of depicting motion that you see in the Sheeler. I just came from the Duchamp show, and thinking about Duchamp's New Descending the Staircase, the idea of depicting motion, of depicting sound, these elusive things are now the property, the ambition of artists in the mid-20th century. Well, the last gallery is our post-war gallery. This is the Middleton's iridescent Rothko on the right here. This is a kind of an accumulation of all the things that we've been building in these modern galleries along the south side of the building. And so what you see pulled together in the 1940s and 50s in American art is that freedom of color, and drawing and brushwork that you saw in that first landscape gallery, tapping into dreams and the unconscious. That's a big early Jackson Pollock from the 40s in the middle distance there that is beginning to drip, but it's mostly about dreams and automatic writing and about the legacy of surrealism. It's about engaging geometry, and Lee Krasner's painting is a little too small, it's behind that person walking in the middle distance there. It has a geometric grid, and so Krasner is building out of that idea of the power of geometry, but certainly you can feel that in the Rothko, in his famous grids. And then that wish to express emotion and spirituality that certainly glows from the Rothko. It's a very emotional painting. And that wish to have the color and the gesture and so forth express those qualities of emotion. All of that builds to this thing we call abstract expressionism, which also is a recap of the themes of immigration that you've been getting from the very first gallery. That idea of Steckheimer descended from Jewish immigrants, of the Pennsylvania Germans coming from Germany. We have Hispanic artists as well as our Native Americans, that idea of many different communities pulling together here to create something that's very American. And in this gallery, we have, and here's sort of selected photos of images from that gallery. Noguchi's great sculpture, Noguchi, whose dad was from Japan. Peter Volkos, that's his ceramic in the upper left-hand corner. Volkos is of Greek descent, coming out of Montana. We have Jackson Pollock and Motherwell. Pollock coming from Wyoming, Motherwell coming from California. Um, these, in other words, drawing from all the corners of the United States, all pulling them into New York. And in addition, we have Hans Hofmann coming from Germany, de Kooning from the Netherlands, Rothko, who was born in Latvia and came to the Pacific Northwest as a child, drawing together all of this talent, pulling it into the Cedar Borough in lower New York. The idea here that the United States has now become a world power, it has become a magnet for talent, and now rather than just American artists joining the world stage in Paris or London, the world stage is now here. The world stage is in the United States, and it's a place of astonishing and exhilarating creativity and amazing diversity. In other words, there's no unanimity of style here, but what there is a unanimity of talent being brought to bear on something about America. So this is the last of the galleries. At this point, we hope you will be then lured on to our modern and contemporary galleries where the Middleton great Jasper Johns, according to what is enthroned. This is a 20-foot painting in multiple parts that is representative of the legacy of abstract expressionism plus the power of pop. Again, Duchamp appearing to impact the artists of the 1960s. So the story continues on the other side of the building. I'm going to stop and say, please come enjoy these galleries. Also come and see, I haven't really dwelt on the partner exhibition at CAFA. The two things are seen as yin and yang. You need to see them both and appreciate the CAFA themes and installation and gain a new appreciation of the astonishing creativity of Americans. Questions?
About the Reformation biggest great pieces are looking at the great publicity for what happened in the MSA Boston. I'm wondering if there's an undercurrent of discussion for your magazine.
Yes, we have already met once to talk about this. We are meeting again next week. So all I can say is we are taking this under consideration. This is, I think, an important moment to think about how are reparations due. I can't say that we have an answer yet. I'm not sure that what Boston has done is the pattern for everyone else. Basically, those of you who didn't follow this story, they have paid the descendants or a group of descendants and then taken the work back on loan. So it remains in the galleries in Boston, that they have two pieces. Maybe they returned one and one remained on. So that was their solution. I can't say where we're going, but we're talking about it.
Covered a lot in these places. They have a strong sales and auction reporting on American ceramics. They run an article bringing the states to break up the days, and they would be
Yeah. So PMA bought ours in the 1990s, in 1997, before the market was quite as excited as it is right now. So all of these things need to be considered. Thank you. Other questions? It only takes an hour and 20 minutes to get to Philadelphia. Okay? It's not that far away. Next. Great.